Hello, and welcome back to Behind the Post. My next guest is a senior content and social media manager with 4 years' experience in the finance and technology industries. She currently leads the social media strategy at Upslide, a B2B SaaS scale up, and she loves the challenge of presenting software in a fun and exciting way on social media. Outside of work, Chloe is training for a marathon and enjoying renovating her first property in London. Without further ado, please welcome to the show, Chloe Stevens. Chloe, are you ready to go behind the post with me?
Yes, definitely. Thank you, Olivia. So happy to be on the podcast. I've listened to quite a few of the episodes myself. So yeah, honored to be invited on.
I'm so glad to have you here today, and I'm so glad that we connected. I know this episode is going to be absolutely packed with so much value. So, Chloe, I'll start you off with an easy one. What is Upslide and what does your role entail?
Yes, so Upside is a branding and productivity solution for Microsoft Office, specifically for financial services and professional services. So we basically help to automate and eliminate all of the sort of manual tasks that come with document generation. And my role in particular, so as you mentioned, I'm a senior content and social media manager. So the content side of it basically means that I'm spreading the word of Upslide, whether it be via webinars, SEO blogs, case studies. So yeah, touch everything on Upslide that has words, basically, to summarize. And then on the social media front, so I'm sure we'll deep dive into it today. But yeah, I oversee the social media strategy from the content side of it to the execution to the reporting and analysis too.
Wow, the jack of all trades. Gonna have to
It's the
ask.
classic with a scale up, right?
Yes, definitely. I feel yeah. Amazing. One thing that I was really eager to speak to you about is social strategy. And from my conversations with other social media professionals, I've come to the conclusion that it can be challenging to wrap up our social strategy and put a bow on it. We know what we're doing, we know who we're trying to reach, we know the networks we're on, but when it comes to actually compiling the social strategy, it can be really challenging. So I would love if you could get super granular and talk through how you create a social strategy, how you set it up, if you're using Google Slides, if you're using PowerPoint, and what you actually include in your strategy.
Yeah, happy to go through it. And first of all, I am under the impression that more is more. So I include a lot of information in my social media strategy. So we're about to open a can of worms. So firstly, I can get started on where we set this up. And basically, I always used to use sort of PowerPoints or Excels, but I was finding that people within the business would basically have access to maybe like an older version, which was causing issues. So they didn't necessarily have the most up-to-date information. So we've recently switched to Notion, which I don't know if you've heard of Notion. It's
I've
yeah,
never used it, but I've heard of it.
we love it. Being a software company, we always use other softwares to make our workflows more efficient, more productive. And it's basically a sort of online note-taking forum. But the reason why we love it is because everyone in the business has access to it. So everyone sees the latest version. People within the business can also comment directly. So if they've got any questions about what we're doing with the social media strategy or want to get involved or anything, it encourages that sort of visibility within the business, which is really great for us. We also use monday.com as well for any form of project management. So say, for example, I've got some initiatives that require other team members within the business. So our employee advocacy, for example, I'll also have a task within Monday that has all of the collaborators involved as well. So the social media strategy itself takes into a couple of different softwares.
Yeah.
So yeah, quite a lot there. What do you want me to go into now? What we include in it as well?
Yes, please. Sorry, follow-up question. So you're housing the social strategy itself in Notion. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, let's dive into everything that you include and break it down. Because I know for me, sometimes approaching social strategy can feel intimidating. So I love if you could just break it down and get super specific.
Yeah, of course it is. Don't get me wrong. It's a big task that needs to be handled, and it can take a while as well. It's got to be handled well. I think the first step is to really reflect on the previous year. So you need to deep dig into what went wrong, what worked, whether you were targeting the right audience, whether functionality on LinkedIn has changed over the year as well. So whether you need to adapt that, because as social media managers, we have to be consistently reactive in on that front as well, and what worked in the previous year might not work again the following year. So I'd say that's definitely the first step. Next step, which is a really key one as well, is to obviously include your overall objectives and the KPIs you'll be tracking in order to reach that objective. So for us at Upside, that is brand awareness, and in two separate categories. So one are core industries, but also our existing clients as well, because we want to obviously build a community front too.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why it's so important to have KPIs assigned to that as well is because you need to be able to obviously track the ROI of social media and be able to link those KPIs to your sales leadership team as well, to really get them bought into how it's going to impact the overall business. So yeah.
How are you doing that? Follow-up question. How are you? First of all, how are you measuring brand awareness? Is it impressions or reach? And then how are you proving that ROI without giving too much away?
Of course. So it's interesting. So we've actually changed our metrics recently. So previously we were always following the vanity metric sort of thing. We would be looking at total followers, total likes. And don't get me wrong, it was great for me because I was able to show that in my first year, I grew our audience by 55%.
Wow.
Which, yeah, it was great. But I had to question at one point, is this the audience that we actually want? Are they going to be interested in pursuing Upside? Is it our target audience? And yeah, now we've basically focused on trying to grow our audience in our core industries, and that has basically helped get buy-in from the rest of the business, because they know that it will be impacting the sales cycle. It'll be helping them reach their targets too. So I think switching the metrics up so that we're focused on core industries has really helped us.
Love it. Amazing.
So yeah, so we were obviously talking about setting KPIs and how to reach those goals, and how do they align with the business goals too. Once you've set that, so your high level objectives for the year, I think then it's really important to go into the how. So how are you going to achieve these missions? And again, for us, so with that, we consider different content pillars, so whether we've got the right content pillars in place. So we look into ESG and technology, digitalization, those sorts of things. We need to work out whether there's any other content pillars we should be introducing to help us reach those goals. We look into introducing new initiatives too, and I'll detail all of this here. So again, for us this year, it's employee advocacy, something we haven't done before. So this, we're hoping, will be a really key initiative in helping us hit that brand awareness and that side of things. Mm-hmm. And then also, I think it's really key to look into any untapped areas of social media as well. So again, for us, we've never really been big on YouTube, in all honesty. Mm-hmm. And so that's the sort of area that we could look into and think, okay, if we add this into our strategy this year, this might really help us get there.
Amazing. Yeah, I think first of all, thank you for breaking it down. I think it's so important to I love how you started with looking back on past performance, because again, it's so important because you can't manage what you can't measure. So it's really important to go back and see the past performance that you can pivot and tweak for the year ahead. And I know part of that we touched on is measuring and setting KPIs and metrics and all the fun stuff. And I always love to ask my guests how they're measuring success. And I know we touched on it, but what's funny is all of my guests always say something a little bit different, which makes sense because success looks different to everyone. So I'd love if you could maybe just go back and outline the key things you're looking at and why. And maybe if you could also touch on which metrics you are communicating up to management and what you think is important to let everyone else in the business know. Because I know that also can be a can of worms. You don't want to share too much because not everyone is as versed in social media and all the little intricacies as we are. So you have to be careful about that one. But I'd love if you could just break it down for us again.
Yeah, of course. So as mentioned, whilst I said that we were steering away from the vanity metrics, we are still keeping it, because you do need to know how many followers you're gaining, your average engagement rate, how many clicks you're getting and stuff like that. So we do still track all of those. We do have KPIs for those. And there are sort of high level stuff that I present back to the marketing meeting in particular every 3 weeks potentially, just to keep people up to date with how we're going and see that sort of trajectory over time. The other side of our KPIs, as I mentioned, is to do with the sort of target audience. So we are tracking how often our target accounts engage with or follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter and everything. We also are looking into the conversions of ads. So despite obviously brand awareness being our main focus, ultimately we want social media to be driving people into our sales cycle too. So we look at increasing the amount of new users from social media to our website too. And these are the sorts of things that I think our senior leadership are more interested in. It's like the numbers, the conversions. So yeah, we take a separate approach with that.
Amazing. Yeah, I think it's always important to look at those conversions because, again, you could have 1 million followers, you could have 100 followers, but unless you are actually making it meaningful engagement, unless people are actually going to your website and getting into the sales cycle, that's what you really want. That's what every social media manager dreams of. So
Yeah.
it's super important to also pay attention to those conversions as well. And you mentioned earlier that you handle a lot of the content at Upslide. And I would love if you could share a few tips and tricks for writing engaging content, because I know you've been in finance and you're in tech, and sometimes we can be seen as a little bit boring, which is okay. We're not as boring as some people may seem.
Yeah.
And one thing that I saw a video about was it's so important if you're looking for inspiration is to actually look at finance companies and industries that aren't looked at as creative because what they can come up with is so inspiring. So I would love if you could share a few tips and tricks for writing engaging, authentic content.
Yeah, of course. And honestly, it's hard. There's no sort of set rules to this either. What works previously might not work again. But some of the key sort of things I've picked up over time, and one of the main things I would say is to really get to know your audience. So even me flipping from finance to tech, I had to massively change my approach to writing content too. And I think it can be quite difficult for marketers sometimes because we're not necessarily the client facing teams, but it's really important to try and get as much face time with clients as possible, just to get to know your audience and what makes them tick. So for us, I join quite a lot of sales demos. So to understand what their pain points are, what sort of things get them, how they find us. But I also, as well, have started recently actually interviewing some of my core clients too. So I'll actually get them on the phone and I'll ask them what sort of content they engage with on social media. How do they like information presented? What sort of brands they like following and why? So really understanding those things help me tailor the way I approach my content too. So yeah, I think that's a really big one. But then also one thing as well that I think sometimes software companies can fall into is, and we've done in the past too, is just showing your really great product basically, because you've got loads of updates that's super great and you want to show it off to everyone. But frankly, I think people want to follow people on social media. And so as soon as we pivoted to showcasing the Upside team and our commitments and values, we saw a massive spike in our engagement as well. And I'm not saying don't show your product and software because it's great and it's key and it's also what gets people on board. But I think you need to really get the balance right of showing faces and real people as well as your software too.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think for us at Oktopost, I really saw a shift in our engagement when I almost started looking at our brand page as a personal page. So I started
Yeah.
to shift it and speak more like a user would on LinkedIn. And I think that is so important because, again, you're marketing your product and you want people to know about your product and what you do. But you're so right. It's all about that balance, which can be really hard to do. But I think, especially you mentioned employee advocacy, once you're getting the word out there more and people will start to recognize your individual employees, that's when they'll start to take more interest in the brand. And then you've started to build a community in that trust. So I feel like all of those little pieces come together. And then you realize you don't have to do this hard sales pitch on social because that's honestly not what people are looking for and not what people are engaging with. That's what you can leverage paid social for. But at the end of the day, people are just looking to engage with other people on social media. We're all human and they're looking to be entertained, inspired, learn a thing or two. And if you're just pushing your product, it's just not engaging. And I always think about,
Completely.
yeah, like people say, if you are at a conference or something, or maybe conference isn't the best example, but you wouldn't just walk up to someone and start pitching your product. You would get to know
Yeah.
them first and build a relationship and then speak about what you do and the company you work for. So I think the same applies for social.
Definitely. You've got to warm people up. And as you say, I think it's a mistake that a lot of people fall into where you just presume you're writing for a business page. So I need to sound corporate. I need to sound like I'm a marketer. And that's just not the sort of copy that actually converts at all. You've got to sound like a person, as you say, and actually connect with people.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you guys do a really good job with that on LinkedIn. And you also get loads of engagement, which is really impressive. And it's hard to do for a brand page. So I know we mentioned earlier that you are working towards building out your employee advocacy program. And I would love to know how you are going about getting the wider team involved and getting their buy-in. I know a lot of times when I speak to our customers when they're launching their employee advocacy program, one of their biggest struggles is, okay, how do I get everyone involved? How do I get their buy-in? How do I get them excited to be posting on social media? So I'd love if you could share maybe a few tips or things that you've learned as you are building out this program.
Yeah, of course. As I say, super excited to get into this year. It's not something we've touched at Upside before, so I can imagine this is going to have a real big impact on our social media moving forward. Despite the fact we've not fully got into the weeds of it yet, we have already started on the first step, which is to educate the team on the sort of impact it will have, not just on the business, but then within their roles and personally too. So, for example, we've been letting our C-suites know that for them, it basically is going to help position them as thought leaders in their field, to build out that persona for them. For sales and marketing, it's obviously just going to be increasing the brand awareness of Upslide, which obviously, as we mentioned, in turn will eventually help create warmer leads, as people will know of Upslide before they actually necessarily know they need software like that. For our client solutions teams, it is going to basically be increasing the amount of platforms that they can be reached by clients, so helping to strengthen their relationships with them. And then obviously for HR and people team, it's just going to help with recruitment. So to build such a great employer branding is just only going to benefit everyone. So I think it's breaking it down with each team and really tailoring the approach and just explaining to why it's going to be super important to them as well. That was really key for us in getting people involved. But also, as well, we use case studies of brands that are doing it really well. So again, I know Oktopost, you guys do it really well, and I know that you work with Play too, and I've seen that they do it super well on LinkedIn, same as Zoom. So I've just been given examples of clients and people, companies that have done it so far and the success that they've seen from it. I think that's really key too.
Yeah.
And then I guess the final sort of approach we're going with this, which I think is also pretty key, is you can't expect everyone to be bought into it straight away. So I think the way we're approaching it is choosing a select group of individuals who we know are interested in building out their profile and becoming a bit of an internal influencer for Upslide. And it's those sorts of group of people that will be building up the confidence and using as a bit of a test group to see what works and what doesn't. And then we have no doubt that as soon as there is success with this smaller group, everyone is going to be messaging me saying, Chloe, I want to be an internal advocate. How can I join up? So I think, yeah, starting with that smaller group and just making them a success first is going to be really key.
Yeah, totally. I'm very excited for you to launch your program because your metrics are going to be out of control. I know for us at Oktopost, our advocacy content outperforms our corporate every time, which of course makes sense because our advocates have a much wider reach than our brand page. But I'm very excited for you guys. And yeah, I think I love how you broke that down. And I feel like that is exactly how you should be going about starting a program, starting off with a small pilot group. And then again, once everyone sees the results you're getting, the engagement, everyone else is going to be wanting to be a part of it. You're going to get tons of Slack messages. And yeah, amazing. And a lot of companies already have some type of advocacy going on. I think when people approach or are thinking about employee advocacy program and starting one, it can be intimidating because it's first you're creating all this content for your employees and it just seems like a lot. But when you think about it, you probably already have some type of advocacy program set up, whether you're just sending a Slack message saying, hey, let's engage with this, or we just posted a new blog. Can you guys share it out? Or you probably have employees that are already sharing content on social media. So it's putting it all together. And it's not just you pushing content on them to share, it's them building their personal brands. And that's why employee advocacy is truly so powerful. So I'm very excited to follow along and follow with all of your employees' posts. But I wanted to swing back on one thing before we wrap up the show here. And I know we talked about earlier writing content for social and how to be more authentic. And I wanted to ask you, going back to talking about not feeling too salesy on social. Again, you guys get really good engagement on LinkedIn, and I would love to know how you go about balancing your content. So, how do you go about telling the upslide story, but still be building community and being engaging and inspiring people? Because I know, especially in tech, it can be tricky to balance. So, are you doing more product focused content and mixing in more human, people focused community content? Can you break down kind of your content playlist, if you will?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned about the strategy, so we have key content pillars that we've investigated prior. So we know that these are content pillars that are going to be interesting to our core ICPs. And they're obviously that we have website content pillars and then we have social media content pillars, which are always influenced but slightly different too. So
Mhm.
as I mentioned, that might be like technology, product, ESG, so sustainability. So we're a B Corp, so we've got a big sustainability and positive impact pillar as well. But obviously, like upside team, as you mentioned, these are all part of our content pillars. And I think as we've grown as a brand, we've realized, as I say, that the product percentage needs to be a lot smaller versus the our commitments and values and our upside team and the growth there. So I think it's just about switching that balance up and ensuring that all of these key content pillars are included in our social plan, but switching the ratios up so that it's as impactful as possible.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's so important to mix it up because if you don't, then you start to sound a little bit spammy. And on our, when I'm planning out our content, we have every different campaign a different color. So that's super helpful for
Yeah,
me to make sure that I'm not talking about the same topic or thing over and over again so I can keep it diverse. So I love
for
that.
sure.
Tip.
And a really good barometer for me, and something that you see quite a lot, is if your colleagues aren't finding your content interesting, then people who don't know your business are not going to find it at all interesting. So I always say to people, be as brutal as possible. If there's something, if you think our feed's too samey, or you think we're posting too much product, or you think actually we are posting way too many recruitment posts at the moment, let me know. I'm so open. And if you're not finding it interesting, then we need to do something about this. So I find honestly the colleagues are the
Yeah.
best person to test for that.
Yes, that they have the best feedback. So I wholeheartedly agree. I've seen that so many times, and it's something that I always keep in the back of my head is if I'm not excited to post it, then why would my audience be why would they even want to read it or engage with it? So that's a great piece of advice. We are nearing the end of the show here, and I have one final question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what is one thing you wish your colleagues and other departments knew about working in social media?
It's a good question. I think my answer follows on to what we were just saying, but one thing I really want is for all of my colleagues and other teams to share their insights. So, in two senses here, though. So, firstly, because everyone has social media. So, everyone has different social medias for sure. Some people might absolutely love Instagram, others TikTok, others YouTube, others Reddit as well. So, it will
Yeah.
completely vary within the company. So, everyone has ideas of engaging content, and that's what I want to hear. So if you've seen something that you're like, this is great, we should try this idea, then I'm all ears for it. Because one of the things as a social media manager, it is hard to constantly think of new varieties of content and different ways to present information. So
Mhm.
I want any idea that they've got, that I want them to feel comfortable to bring it forward to me. So that's one sense of sharing their insights. But the other insights that I want as well is if they are speaking to our clients or something, and our clients mention, you know what, I'm really interested in this topic at the moment, please let us know. Because as I say, we don't really get as much face time in marketing. So
Mhm.
if you hear that there's a particular topic or something like that from our clients, then please share it. We're all ears.
Yeah, definitely get super close with your sales guys or go back and listen to recordings. That is honestly where I find the most inspiration is hearing it directly from your audience. And you mentioned this earlier, and I just wholeheartedly agree. Like sitting in on those calls and those meetings and hearing the feedback directly from them, that's exactly the content that you should be sharing, what they care about. I think that is, yeah, such a great tip. And I wanted to say thank you so much for joining me behind the post. I love everything you shared, especially around social strategy. I feel like you just outlined it so well. I know that's going to help so many people. So, thank you so much for joining me. I've loved sitting down with you and learning about all the things you were doing at Upslide. So, thanks for joining me.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great fun, and yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it come out.